Okay, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're at, maybe even good morning. My name is Aaliyah Olds, and I'm the host and founder of I'm Breaking into Tech and the Breaking into Tech live series. So thank you all for tapping in this evening or morning, depending on where you're at. So first, before we get started, I want everybody to drop in the chat and let me know where you're tuning in from. I know we had a few people across the country last time, so this will be really cool. And I'll start by letting you all know that I am located here in the U.S., right in North Carolina. I'm from Durham, North Carolina, but I'm located in Winston-Salem. Where are you guys located? Give you all a few moments here. Let's tap in. I see Happy Friday. It is Happy Friday. Very happy.
Friday.
Friday, exactly. We got Atlanta, Georgia. We got South Carolina. Okay, you're right around the corner. Raleigh, North Carolina, Houston, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Texas, Connecticut, Afghanistan. All right, so that's what I'm talking about. International, Delaware, Arkansas, Richmond, Virginia, Germany. Okay, Oakland, Cali to ATL. Okay, you were all over the place. New Jersey, that's where I'm from. Afghan. Okay, I seen that. Pennsylvania, Spartanburg, South Carolina. Y'all right around the corner from me. All right, we got Charlotte. I was literally just there last night. Long flight. Michigan,
Michigan.
Arizona, Phoenix. I was just there earlier this week. Jersey stand up. I didn't know you was from Jersey, Xavier. We might be cousins. Charlotte, Tampa, Fairfax. All right. We got people all over. I'm really impressed about the person in Afghanistan. Have no idea what time it is there, but thank you for tuning in. So if you're here, thank you again. This is the first time that we are premiering this live on the I'm Breaking into Tech channel. Usually it's premiered on my personal channel, so I appreciate that. We got Toronto in the building. But if you're here, that means that you're interested in breaking into tech, but not just breaking into tech. You're interested in breaking into a pre-sales role, post-sales role, or tech sales role. So I'm here joined by four phenomenal individuals. Most are have unique stories themselves, and we'll give them opportunity to share that. But we're joined here by I'll actually let you all introduce yourself. Just tell us your name, your title, and what company you represent. So we'll go ahead and start with Alonzo, and we'll just wrap around. I think you all are in the same order that I'm in. Shout out to New York as well.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for having me here today. It's good to see everyone in the chat. So I'm actually in Dallas. I did see some Texas come up there, but I don't think I saw Dallas. But I saw Michigan, so I'm good. I'm from Detroit, so it's cool to see Michigan as well. But yeah, I'm a senior tech recruiter, AWS, and my journey is a little bit different. I think some of the panel here are kind of hands-on. I'm from the recruitment world. But yeah, I'll tell you more kind of how it goes on, how I kind of got in. That's my introduction into tech and kind of learning more about technology and just interacting in the tech world was through recruitment. But yeah, I'm excited to be here and definitely looking forward to answer all questions, any advice I can give.
Thanks, Alonzo. Happy to have you here.
Cool. Hey everyone, my name is Karsten Cheers. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. I think I saw one person representing the best state, Tennessee. So I'm glad you were able to join. I am one of the managers at Rapid7. I lead our global threat intelligence sales engineering team. So very excited to be here. Very excited to share anything I know. Knowledge should be free. So I'm happy to connect and help however I can.
All right, well, we'll go down. So my name is Chris Mabry. I'm a manager of solutions engineering with Datto. And thanks for having us, Aaliyah, and the whole group. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the people that watch it after it's live too. So thank you very much.
All right. My name's Heather Sadler. I'm a regional director for Nutanix. We sell mostly software-defined data center infrastructure, hyper-converged infrastructure, and I live in southern Maine. I'm really excited for this session.
We may have lost Aaliyah. She looks frozen.
Oh.
Oh, there she is.
There she is. Nope, I think we lost her.
Oh, no.
It's so great. Oh, I see someone from Delray Beach. That's awesome. I love seeing everybody from all these different places.
And we got the update that it's 4 in Afghanistan.
I did
Cool.
see that.
That's what I'm
Way to
talking about.
go. Thank you.
Hey, Terrell's here from Miami. Hey, Terrell. I've seen some names I recognize.
It's crazy how every time I do this, like I'm the one that's in buffer mode. I'm the robot here. I can't stand it. So welcome to the tech world, right? I have
Mhm.
Tom on the Cape. Well, it's called Spectrum now. But if y'all in North Carolina, y'all know what I'm talking about with Spectrum. I'm sorry if y'all work for them, but give me something better. Give me something better, please. All right. So yeah, so thank you all for taking the time to introduce yourselves. I just want to hop right into it. So for those who are just joining, we got somebody from Cameroon. That's awesome. So for those who are just joining, this is a live featuring tech sales leaders in a pre-sales space majority, and then also a senior tech recruiter from AWS. These are all very, very highly skilled individuals. If I add it all up, it's probably over 40 years of experience all on this panel alone. In my background, I actually come from the world of recruiting as well. So human resources and recruitment. So my story is very briefly that I spent 9 years in HR recruitment. The last 4 of those 9 years, I functioned as an HR project manager, built out paid training programs to attract and retain diverse talent. I also had the luxury of wearing many hats, which is why I'm now in the tech because I don't want to do that no more. But I was actually um, working with different teams, such as our engineering team, our IT team. I worked in healthcare, so I was working with nurses, nurse managers, and my goal there was to not only attract and retain diverse talent, but I had to build out those paid training programs for them, and then also had to train them on our HCM software, or project management software, any productivity software. So if you all are in the pre-sale space trying to become sales engineers, even what I am as a solutions architect, those are all transferable skills, right? So we're here to talk to you about what what skills are really most important. Like, no fluff. If you guys know anything about me, I'm not here to just be braggadocious and tell you like, oh, this is what I just made it. But my goal is to always bring people on that are actually going to give you actionable advice. And these are the hiring managers. So these are the people who actually get to check off the yes or the no on your application at the end of the day. Then you have a senior tech recruiter who gets to see these applications all the time, and he's actually in the pre-sale space. So before we really dive into it a little bit more, I just want to set the foundation here. So let's start with Karsten. Karsten, how did you actually break into tech? What was your journey there, and how did you get to where you are right now?
So when I was a kid, I wanted to be a doctor, and then I realized I couldn't stand the sight of my own blood. I said I probably shouldn't do this. I worked in retail, kind of worked at like some dollar stores, and then I worked. I don't know if you guys have this where you are, but there's a company called J.C. Penney. So I had department stores, and then when I was in school, or as I got older, getting ready to go to college, I was like, man, I'm kind of fascinated with computers and how you write some text and it can actually create websites and programs and applications. So I said I want to do that. So I started this journey in computer engineering and failed hard. I mean, I flunked like I got like an F minus. It was not for me, but it's all good. I came back home to the Memphis area. I was going to UT Knoxville, and then I kind of started to get into what's now known as cybersecurity, but back then it was called information system security or management information systems. So yeah, so I kind of got my first job as a help desk analyst, and then I worked my way up to desktop tech, and then I got into what's now called Microsoft 365 and things like that. And then I really started to like I was learning the technology. Then I really started to learn how to start to secure it, and how if you're going to deploy something, you have to make sure it's deployed in such a way where it's very difficult to hack into it. So yeah, and before you know it, I'll tell you more about that later. But I got into to pre-sales, and now I'm a global manager for one of the top security companies in the world. So I'm very very fortunate and very blessed.
Awesome. And we're happy to have you. The reasons why I was really excited to connect with Carson is because of that cybersecurity background. I know it's a lot of people that are interested in cybersecurity, but not a lot of people can draw the parallel between cybersecurity and pre-sales. So super excited to have you here and learn a little bit more about your journey. Chris, let's hear from you.
So the year was 2003. Michael Jordan played his last game in the NBA, and 50 Cent's "In the Club" was the #1 song of the year. And
Look,
I
you
graduated
don't
high
even want to know how
school.
old I was at that time.
I was in high school, and I was one of those kids that was quite ahead, and I was in a vocational school that they didn't really know what to do with us. They said, okay, go to this computer science class, get your A+ certification. And so I went through this process. And it was at the time where I'm debating, college, what does this look like? What do I do next? I get an internship with a company, and they end up taking a chance on me. I'm 17 years old. I don't have a license yet. I'm literally taking the bus to the corporate office, and I started my position as a customer success rep. And 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 by the age 20, I was in the network operations center as an engineer. So I just kind of grew real quick through this company. This company was just fantastic. They basically saw a lot of potential. And I went to a dinner party at one of the engineers. Like I was an engineer. Yeah, I was really a tech, but she was a real engineer. And she invited me to her party. And I remember pulling up to her house, and she had this amazing house, drove a really nice car, had this really great family. And that was it for me. I was like, this is it. This is my path to stability. This is my path to a career that means something, that will be around forever. And so I went real tech at first. I was like, we literally worked in a basement, is a real basement. Um, and then I figured out that basically, being in the basement with the lights off was not a thing for me. I actually saw a sales guy named Brett Baldwin. Shout out to Brett. He really changed things around. I saw him do one deal, and I literally walked up to him and said, I really want to get good at what you just did. That's what got me into pre-sales.
That's awesome. And that's real. That just motivate you to figure out like how in the world did you get to where you are right now? And that's kind of like my story as well. More so, I was looking for an opportunity where I could have what I call life work balance. And then I was also trying to figure out, is the 200 to $300,000 salaries, is that even a thing? Like all the work that I've done, I need to see that in my life. So I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who pivoted from being a teacher to a sales development representative and then an account executive, and he shared like, yes, that's a real thing. And after having conversation with many individuals like yourself, I realized that that was one great aspect of this whole tech sales pre-sales world, but also the other benefits and just the culture itself was just phenomenal. So super super excited to hear more about everyone else's journey. So want to go ahead and move forward with Alonzo. I want to hear about your journey. Like, how did you break into the tech space? I know you were coming from a different lens as being a recruiter, but your experience is just
Yeah.
as valid as well.
Yeah, I would say, my situation is a little bit different. I didn't grow up to want to be a recruiter either. I didn't even know like recruiting was a thing. I went to college to be an accountant, to be honest with you all. I was an accountant and a marketing major. I did my internships as I was supposed to in college. I went to Western Michigan University, and so I had a job offer out of college to go to Thompson's Accounting. Yeah, that was the name. Thompson's Accounting in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I was supposed to be there on December 17th, right after graduation. And I'm like, I'm not going. And I packed up and I drove from Detroit. All I had was an Xbox. This was back in 2007, but I had an Xbox and I had my clothes and I drove to Dallas. And yeah, I had a friend that said I could sleep on the couch for like until he got tired of seeing me on the couch. And so that's how I kind of got started. And the skill sets that I had from college, some other things that I was doing, communication was really a strong point for me. And I think that's something like to consider for all of you transitioning. Take your strengths and move it forward with you. So I started looking for positions where I could do that. There was a recruiting company that just needed someone to start helping recruit sales folks. And so I started there. And I went from recruiting sales to all the way to then I started doing like T-Mobile. That was like a big organization where I did sales. Before I was recruiting for smaller companies. T-Mobile was the first like big company that I started doing sales. But T-Mobile kind of introduced me through communication. There was a lot of other things like Internet of Things. And so I started to kind of get familiar with some terminology. And then from there, I focused on like, hey, I want to direct my career towards tech. So I think that's just one thing. I know the goal for most is to do pre-sales, but I would also just say that if you kind of already have a skill set, you may be able to transition in from something you already know how to do, because most companies, tech companies especially, they have every position. If you do accounting, if you do finance, if you do marketing, they kind of have it all. But you'll kind of get exposed to the culture, if you're there. But anyway, fast forward, I started FinTech was like the first tech I was in because I was doing banking. Goldman Sachs was one of the clients that I worked with, and then I went to a smaller startup and helped them launch, stand up their organization. And that's when I got experience to go to market. And that's when I started experience to like sales engineers and things like that from a recruitment standpoint. And then from there, I started transitioning to like, bigger tech companies. And so, so that's kind of my transition, y'all. And I will just tell you that if anything I can say real quick in closing is like within tech, you have to stay curious and keep learning because it's not really like you just go learn this one thing and then you're always like, I don't code. I want you to know that too. I don't code, but like I'm picking up on the terminology, the concepts and all that just from being interested. And of course, interviewing a bunch of people that are way more technical than me. And every time they tell me something that is like really good, like I absorb it, I write a lot of it down, I research it, and then before you know it, like I sound really confident in what I'm doing, what I'm doing. So that's just a little bit of my backstory. And so, but I do enjoy just kind of the tech world in general.
See, Alonzo already jumping into the
My
tips
bad.
here. I love it though. That's something that I always tell people. And I was just talking to a young lady early this morning, and hopefully she's on the call. But just saying, like, use your current skill set. A lot of people try to jump into different ponds and swim with other fish, but you have your own pond right there of skills. And a lot of the times you're working with software right then and there. You don't have to code, right? And another thing, most people don't, it's a new world now, but most people don't intentionally seek out to be a recruiter. That's something that they just end up falling in. And I hear the same happens with being a sales engineer, even a solutions architect, et cetera, et cetera. But it's all about your environment. So first things first, you all want to surround yourself with like-minded individuals, start networking with other individuals that are already in the field, try to learn from them, also try to give more than you take. So that way the relationship can be mutually beneficial, because these are working professionals. Everyone up here is a working professional, but this is volunteer time that they're dedicating because they're really passionate about seeing other people succeed. So last but not least, we're going to hear from Heather. She's going to represent for the ladies. It's the last month of Women's History Month, and she's the only lady on the panel besides myself. So I can't wait to hear from you, Heather. How was your journey breaking into tech, and how did you get to where you are today?
So thank you so much. And I liked Chris's intro. The year was, it's great. So for me, I had no tech ambitions. I just always kind of knew that something would find me. I went to University of Pittsburgh, not the best student. I graduated, but had a lot of fun along the way. Still have a lot of the best friends that I have today were from the University of Pittsburgh. And after University of Pittsburgh, much like a couple of you guys, just, experimented, went into retail. I was an au pair in Germany for a little bit. I moved back down to South Florida and hung out a little bit. And then an ex-boyfriend of mine, he met someone who worked at AT&T and said, hey, my girlfriend's looking for a job. And I interviewed for a job at AT&T and I got it. And that was in 1997. And the job I got was a data network account executive. So it was a sales job, but it was more of a technical overlay. And I knew nothing about it. Luckily, I had some great mentors and I was all in. I figured I had nothing to lose, and learned all about, telephony and telecom and networking, and the internet, believe it or not, guys, was kind of brand new back then, especially in the corporate world. So I just embraced it. And so, I started in kind of that precursor to pre-sales architecture and engineering. There wasn't language for that then. There were just these roles where I would assist salespeople with and customers with design and how to utilize wide area networking and how to migrate off of technologies like X.25. And I was, building the plane as I flew it. I know that's a cliche term, but I think it's really apropos, and that sometimes you're just sort of charging along and building something as you sell it and as you present it. But from there, after 20 years of technical sales, mobility sales, overlay support, I was a principal architect. I was a director of sales. I went to VMware on the software side. And I love that. And I will fully admit, was hired into an opportunity where I look back and go, oh my gosh, why did they hire me? I don't know if I was fully qualified for this job. But I think that's a lesson, right? You kind of need to go for these things. And if you're given the opportunity to interview and present, then capture your network and gain access to information and put a great, story together. Chris, you do a great story. Stories are so important. And the way I approached the opportunity, which is a digital transformation architect, was I just really told a story about business outcomes and solutions for the client, and I let the technology follow. And then that led me to Nutanix, where I had various roles at VMware, and I loved all of them. My last one was leading an SE team, a national SE team of cloud architects for AWS for VMware's VMC solution, Alonzo. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that was great. And just hiring SEs and coaching them and getting involved in pre-sales organizations. And then that led me to Nutanix, where I lead a regional team from a sales perspective. So I think ultimately the net of that is that these things find you. And my goal every time is to always say yes until I can't handle any more yeses. So if someone would ask me to do something, I would say yes. I'd be scared half to death. I would figure out how to do it and then I would do it. But I would always say, okay, I'm going to say yes as long as possible until I have to tell you no, because, I'm overworked or I'm a little overwhelmed. But that's led me to a point where I've got a great network and great resources, and I feel some great skills to move forward with whatever I wanted to do. Yeah, do it scared. Absolutely. Scary is good.
Thank you, Heather. That was a quite a journey. Like you got me at the all pair. And when you said your ex-boyfriend, I was like, oh wait a minute, it's not one of those shows. So I wasn't sure where that was about to go.
No, very brief boyfriend, but he introduced me to AT&T, so that was good.
That's what he was there for. We say that sometimes you meet people for seasons, right?
Exactly.
But that's an awesome journey. All of you all have really, really great experience, and it's so interesting that majority of us, and this is stuff that I didn't know, right? This is off the fly. I don't know a lot of these things about these individuals, but Heather's actually one of my mentors, and I didn't know that about her. But it's so interesting. I think Alonzo and Heather, they cross paths professionally because they have the AWS background. But Heather, Alonzo, and myself, we all cross paths professionally. I think maybe even Chris or Karsten. I think we all have some telecom experience. I worked at AT&T as well back in the day. So the whole purpose of me asking these questions is just for you all to be able to see that these individuals didn't start at where they are right now. They started from very entry level basic roles, and they just try to figure it out as they went along. It wasn't necessarily intentional. It was something that they fell into, but once they got a taste of it, they were like, okay, this is where I want to go. And many of them mentioned that they weren't the best in school or college, but they had finished. So that leads me to my next question. As a leader, or even as a recruiter in any of your roles, is a degree or certification required? And if so, what type of degree is required? Anybody can chime in at this point.
Go ahead, Chris. I was about to say I can
Yeah.
start.
What I what I really like to see is somebody who so I hire it for pre-sales engineering, right? I believe that solutions engineers can have a capital S and a lowercase e, or a lowercase s and a capital E, right? You have storytellers and you have engineers. You need both to build a good team. Um, so it really depends on the team, the needs, and I like to see certifications, but almost more like certifications that tell me you understand what pre-sales actually is. Like the Coursera certifications, pre-sales collective certifications. If you're involved in the world of pre-sales collective or pre-sales in general, that tells me you understand that there are stories to be told, that we need to lead technology to solve revenue problems. That stuff's hard to teach. Um, Technology, depending on the tech, can be easier to teach than teaching somebody the ability to be able to present and ask questions. So
I agree.
I prefer to hire people who have that, and we can teach the technology. A degree is by no means a barrier of entry for me at all.
You guys heard that, right? So a degree is not a barrier of entry. Now, if you do have one, I'm sure most will say that it can get you into certain doors quicker, right? But it's not a barrier to entry to at least Chris's team. But I want to hear from Karsten and Heather.
Yeah. So first, it's crucial to understand that when you're talking about pre-sales, like other professions, there are levels. So you can have an associate, sales engineer, regular sales engineer, senior, principal. Then you can have senior one, senior two, so on and so forth. So that's the first part. And depending upon the company, when you get to a certain level, you may have to have a certain degree or a certain certification or collection of them. For me personally, no, you don't need a degree to work on my team. You don't need certifications to work on my team. It does help. If you do have them, you definitely will have an advantage over people that don't. But no, it's not a requirement. If someone is applying, that's not like the first thing I'm looking for. Where did they go to school? Like that's not it. I would say school is proof that you know how to learn. That's what school is. So if you have an associate's, a bachelor's, a doctor, I'm not taking any clout from it, but school is proof that you know how to learn. It's not the only proof. There are so many other ways to learn. You can build a personal portfolio. You can take some free training. You can graduate from YouTube Academy, right? But as long as you're documenting what you're doing, you have proof that you know how to learn. So that's it from the education standpoint. Beyond that, we can talk about skills in a moment. I'm quite sure Aaliyah is going to ask that, but because I work in cybersecurity, you do have to have a cybersecurity understanding. Specifically with me in threat intelligence, you have to have a understanding of the clear, deep, and dark web, all that stuff. But those things can be taught. I can't teach you how not to be a jerk, though. So the soft skills are so important.
Let me tell you something real quick before we jump over to Heather and Alonzo. This is why these individuals are on this chat. So I say this all the time for you all who have tuned into previous lives that I've created or have hosted, is that I intentionally work with individuals who are pleasant, and then also who are value givers. And this is just my interpretation. It's just from my point of view, right? You might meet other people that you feel are pleasant, but people who are pleasant and value givers, and then who can actually help you pull out the value in yourself. And that is a very, very rare skill that a lot of leaders actually just don't have, or I'll just say managers don't have. A leader actually has that skill. So that's why these individuals are on this call today. Even with Alonzo being a senior technical recruiter, I know he and I talked a while back, and his story and his experience has brought him to a place where I feel like he has a tremendous level of value to provide to this conversation. So same question for you, Heather. We heard from Chris and Carson. Are degrees important? If so, which ones are? And if you all require any certifications, or if certifications give you a leg up, which ones would you be looking for?
Yeah, so I would agree with everyone else. I don't really necessarily think a particular degree is required. If one is there and you have a candidate that's a strong candidate and they have a great degree in, computer engineering, mechanical engineering, anything like that, that gives them that sort of technical context, that's great. And we talked about Pre-Sales Collective. There's also the National Society of Sales Engineers, and a lot of those guys that are in that group, they start with a more technical degree, and then they also have a business degree on the side. Again, not required, but they seek that out because they want to be customer facing. They want to be engaging, right? They want to be communicative and personable and that sort of thing, versus sort of heads down, doing your more technical stuff. And so those are the people that I look for. I want to make sure that they can communicate. They understand that pre-sales has the word sales in it, right? And not that they're going to be cold calling, not that they're going to have to be necessarily building a funnel in the traditional perspective, but that in their skill of technological context and experience, as well as their ability to draw out from clients what is important to them and what solutions they're looking for and what business outcomes they're looking for. And then also knowing what they have in place today that they can't get rid of, right? They have technical debt, or they have things that they've made an investment in, but they want to advance, that this pre-sales person can match it together and create that solution for the client. And so that's not a degree, right? There's no college degree that does that. So that's what I look for. I look for someone that's immersive, that just kind of wants to jump in and kind of learn some things as they go. And also what I would say is, for anybody who wants to manage or be a director over SEs or SAs, you don't need to be an engineer, right? I'm not technical either. I'm technical, but I'm not an engineer, right? I can't do what some of our great solution architects and solution engineers do, but I know how to coach them towards what I just mentioned, right? The emotional intelligence and the way they communicate and the way they look customers in the eye and create those relationships. And so when I have a candidate and they come on board, I'm kind of gearing more towards that and getting a sense of, okay, you can learn the tech, right? I know you can handle that. I want to know how you handle the relationship, and not only that, your relationship with your sales partner, and are you the best team? If that makes sense.
Love that. Love that. So we heard from all of the managers on the call, but I want to hear from you, Alonzo, as a
Okay.
recruiter, like
Yeah, I'll try
especially
to
at
keep my.
AWS.
Yeah, I'll
What
try
are
to
what
keep.
are your hiring managers looking for?
Yeah.
What do you see? Because this is the thing that I hear a lot, and I hear a lot from people. People are just so afraid of the ATS, the applicant tracking system. So before you even get into that, I really would love for everyone to hear from you what an ATS is versus what your job is. I feel like a lot of people assume that the ATS is the recruiter. So please, from
That's interesting.
your words and your mouth, because people do not listen to me in my 9 years of experience in HR, please tell them what an ATS is. And then also
Yeah.
if that's a requirement degree or certification.
Okay. Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah. So applicant tracking system. There's a lot of them out there. Bigger ones, Workday, iSIMS, a few out there. But really, we just use that as a place to gather resumes. When you apply, it's like if you were to go to LinkedIn and apply, and you see all of those, like, 2,000 people apply, and we're trying to get them from that apply to our ATS system. Like, even sometimes all of them don't even come through. But we use the ATS system to kind of just manage everyone. who applies, keep their resume database there. But most recruiters who are really strong don't live and die off of the ATS system. We do a lot of sourcing and searching for ourselves. LinkedIn would probably be a bigger tool that we would use more than anything, because we can filter. We can meet with our hiring managers. We're kind of like matchmaking. So, hey, who do you like? What do you like? And we can get everything that they need, and we go straight to LinkedIn, and that'll be a quicker search a lot of times for us to narrow it down for what we want, versus just relying on the applicant tracking system. But the applicant tracking system, there's a few out. They have a few bells and whistles, but they're not going to do what a recruiter would do. And more than anything, I would suggest like you network with recruiters and network with managers and try to talk to someone yourself if you can, or build the relationships, because the applicant tracking systems are, it's just a tool. It's just a tool. As far as working with hiring managers, a lot of hiring managers through my day. So the cool thing about being recruiting is that you get to listen to. So it may be someone who I think is really strong, and then I'll give them to the hiring manager, and I have to listen. It's cringeworthy sometimes. You have to hear the feedback and the debrief, but I start to get an idea of consistent, like, okay, this person makes it through, or this type of interview works, or you start to hear some of those things. And when it comes specifically to degrees, okay, from a recruiter standpoint, where you win or lose with me isn't on the degree. It's we want those who can solve problems, and you can communicate how you problem solve, efficient and effective communicators. So that's what we want. Problem solvers that can officially communicate what they're trying, how they solve the problems. When I'm talking to you and I ask you a question, if you are not building in your story or your answer, if you're not giving me like the business problem that you solved and your solution, then I don't really consider you, at least for a certain level of position, you're not really giving me enough to where I can have confidence in you that if I gave you to the manager, you'd give a strong answer or even stronger answer. So when it comes to the degrees and the certifications, for some people, they need to get them. Some people don't. If you can communicate effectively, and if you don't have an AWS Cloud Practitioner certification, that's fine. But if I ask you what business solution you solve, using something with the cloud, and if you can answer that question in a way where I feel good about it, because they're going to ask you a lot more questions on the next round. But if I feel good that, okay, yeah, that makes sense, and like I could see how they could present that. And a lot of times it's about if you can present. Now, I would say one advantage, and I'll stop here, but one advantage for those sometimes that are self-taught is that you would have a knack for explaining complicated things, not like technical things in a non-technical way, because you just went through that process of kind of doing that for yourself. So if you can remember how you did that, that can help in a lot of the sales roles, because a lot of times you're going to have to communicate in that way, because you're going to have you go to a business meeting, you're going to have a different set of audience. IT person maybe, or someone for finance, maybe it can just be a different audience, and you'll need to be able to communicate there. But just to answer your question, the actual degrees, it's kind of something that we'll look to next. Projects would be good if you can say like I did this thing and you have a portfolio and all that. We'll look for that as well.
Awesome. So how can one go about building a portfolio? And this is essentially for anyone. And I just want to also let everyone know that we're speaking to everyone from a very elementary standpoint, assuming that you know nothing, right? That's why this is called I'm breaking into tech or breaking into tech. This is for individuals who may not come from a technical background, or who may come from a technical background but just are unsure how to communicate those transferable skills. So you heard it from everyone here that degrees and certifications aren't necessarily required. They can give you an advantage, right? But what's most important is how you effectively communicate, how you can build that portfolio, and your ability to network. Now, some of you all are not that great at the networking part. Trust and believe I'll be able to provide you all some tips as we go further along to help you all with your networking ability. But what I want you all to know first and foremost is work on your LinkedIn first, right? Before that, make sure your resume is up to par and it actually relates to the industry that you're trying to go in, and it highlights those transferable skills. You also heard that you can go on YouTube University, Coursera. One of my favorite platforms to learn more technical hard skills is Codecademy, because it's essentially free until you want to build that portfolio, or you need that certification. But to Alonzo's point, and I believe even Heather and Karsten, you just need to learn how to effectively communicate that skill set, right? The first step is to get your resume noticed. A lot of times that's going to take a little bit more effort. You may have to, reach out to some recruiters or hiring managers. But you also, when you reach out to them, you want them to be able to have something that's worth looking at. And then please, and I told someone this earlier this week as well, do not put anything on your resume that you can't easily explain. That skills section is not a ground for dumping, because I used to ask people about, okay, so what is this? And I would hear like, we don't want to hear all of that. So don't assume that nobody's going to ask you about those skills. The skills are not your dream skills. These are skills that you actively have right now. And I would even go so far, and this is just my personal opinion, but I would love to hear from Alonzo and everyone else in the call as well. Um, Highlighting those soft skills in your resume or under your skill section is, it doesn't do you that great of an advantage. I would rather see those hard skills up there and your soft skills weaved into the bullet points of how you explain what you did on a day-to-day basis, like cross collaboration, effectively communicated, presented, et cetera, et cetera. Weave those soft skills into those bullets to explain your successes rather than what you did on a day-to-day basis. Most recruiters do not want to see a list of all your tasks, because that's essentially you copying and pasting a job description. They want to see what you actually achieved. So focus on those achievements in the bullets of your resume, but use that skill section to highlight those hard transferable skills, or the skills and or software that's relevant to the industry you want to pivot in. Does anyone want to add to that, or tell me that I'm wrong? If it's okay, we're live. So
I'll say I definitely agree. I'll give you I'll give the audience a tip. So if you're aspiring to get into pre-sales, something that you'll learn sooner rather than later is, if it's on the screen, if you're demoing, like if I'm demoing Gmail, like how to use Gmail, and I want to talk about composing the email, but on that screen is a button that says calendar. Anything that the person sees is fair ground, and they may ask you about it. So it's the same thing with your resume. If you put something on the resume, you have to be able to back it up. So if you put on there, advanced layer 2 and layer 3 architecture, I may not be a networking person, but I say, so tell me, like, what does that mean? And if you can't speak to it, then again, Aaliyah, to your point, like, it's not going to be good. What I would say is, when you're putting your skills on your resume, so if you're saying networking, for example, or let's say printer troubleshooting, all right, that's the skill you put on there. In this job as a help desk analyst, I should be able to look on there and understand how you actually did printer troubleshooting. If you're talking about cyber threat intelligence, right, and you mentioned you're on clear, deep, and dark web, then I should see somewhere on the bullet point that you were able to track threat actor movement on the dark web. Like it should actually be there. So the skill set is are the ingredients. The actual activities, that's the meal. So if you're telling me that you're putting cayenne pepper in the meal, but you lying, bro. Like this gets a little bit of kosher salt. You know what I mean? Like I don't taste it, right? So if you say that you put lemon zest in it, then it just tastes a little tangy. So that's it. So again, the skill set are the ingredients. Your actual career path, that is the meal.
Yep. Real quick, I'll say this, because this came up in a couple of conversations I've had through the week. Just as the cut to the chase, you cannot finesse the recruiters. Like, okay, you're going to meet with a lot of people through this interview process. So for anyone, and I'm not speaking to anyone in particular, I'm just putting it out there. You cannot finesse. You're going to meet with the recruiter. You're probably going to meet with 2 or 3 interviewers. You may have to do some type of live presentation or anything could come up. And these are some very intelligent people. Okay. You're not gonna be able to just throw something on your resume that you don't know and think that when the question comes up, you can repeat like maybe like a 3-sentence something, and they're not gonna know that you don't know what you're talking about. Like it's not you're not gonna do that. So I would encourage you, if you have it on your resume right now, hold off maybe, but at least you now know what you need to go learn. So actually go learn it for real. So when the questions come up, you can answer it. But don't think you're gonna get through all these rounds of interview and no one's gonna figure out that that you don't know what you're talking about. You just,
Yeah,
that's
fake
all.
it till you make it is not real.
Yeah, let's not
That's
do
not a
that.
thing. Not a thing.
Let's not do that at all. But yeah, great points. Does anybody else want to add to that, Heather or Chris?
I would just say from a hiring manager perspective, because it seems like I am like 40% of my job is hiring, and I rely a lot on my recruiters. I've been very fortunate in having amazing recruiters who know what I'm looking for, know what the job is about. They have a good intuition of the candidate. However, they let me look through things as well, and I can counter that and say, no, there's a few things here. Maybe I just want to talk to this person. But what I was going to say there too is, and it sounds silly, but if you are in a specific market, so I'm in the New England market, I'm out of Southern Maine, and my job is for the New England market, and you are applying to a job on my team, and we have no connections in common, right? I can't see how he or she has any connections to the major accounts in the region, anybody, even a second, connection. I get a little concerned about it. Doesn't mean I'll completely reject it, but this is a tool, like it or not. LinkedIn is a very strong tool. Like, get connected so that, we know that you're in the market, and then you have at least some relationship or slight relationship within the region, if that makes sense.
That was a great tip, Heather. I didn't even think about that, but that is a tip that maybe some people aren't fully aware of. So assuming that most people are viewing from LinkedIn, you might have people viewing from Facebook, YouTube, what have you. But primarily, this is featured on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is a social networking platform for professionals. So you want to start there and you want to treat it as such. But Heather made a great point. So let me actually add a few other things to that. So not only should you make sure that you have mutual connections with someone before even reaching out to someone, maybe like a higher level manager or recruiter, you also want to make sure that your profile is filled out, or what we call optimized. So that way it's clear of what role you're looking for. We understand that right now you might work at Starbucks, or right now you might work at AT&T, et cetera, et cetera. But your profile should not only show your professional goals, but it also should show your professional experience relevant to the industry that you're trying to pivot into. And again, you all have a lot of transferable skills. We'll talk about how you can highlight some more of those a little bit later. But even so, show those educational milestones. Use LinkedIn Learning, use Coursera, use all of these other platforms that might be able to give you some um, credibility in the industry that you're trying to go to. So if you can take a sales engineering course, or a foundation to cybersecurity, or foundation to AWS, et cetera, et cetera. Take those courses so that way people can see that on your resume, or your LinkedIn, and make sure that your resume is highlighting, just like Karsten said, it's highlighting the ingredients and then showing the entire meal. It has to relate. I tell people all the time, like, your resume has to tell a story, and it has to tell a story of progress. So if you're coming from a role that is completely irrelevant, like my experience in human resources was irrelevant, visibly, but I wrote my resume in a way to show and highlight those transferable skills, and then also show my educational progress to taking courses, taking boot camps, building out a portfolio, and then also highlighting those technical and hard skills that ultimately allowed me to land the offers that I ended up landing. So it's not a luck thing. It's always by science and design. And I can almost guarantee you that majority of these individuals probably wouldn't be on this call, and majority of those individuals on my previous lives probably wouldn't have been on the call, unless I built out my page in a way to show I'm actually in the industry, because people like to sit with other people that are like-minded. And then also seeing that I may have some connections in their space. So that was a great tip, Heather. And what I would say first and foremost is, if you guys are looking for a specific role, you can look for other people at the companies that you want to work for that may work in supporting roles. So, for instance, I'm talking specifically to the sales engineers. Look for sales development representatives who work at that company. Look for account executives who may work at that company. Look for associate sales engineers. And yes, look for senior sales engineers, et cetera, to start building out your network before you reach out to the hiring manager and the recruiter, so that way they can see that connection.
Yeah, the old school way of applying with, apply, research, connect. You flip that around. Connect, research, apply, or research, connect, and apply. I would not recommend applying before you have any of those things done.
Love that. And as actually someone asking in the chat earlier if any of these people are hiring, y'all missing the point. You got to get the information first. Chris just said it. Research first. Do not reach out to, I bet you somebody already in y'all inbox. Do not reach out to any of these individuals before listening to what they say they're looking for. That's what this is for. They're telling you what they're looking for. And then also they're sharing a lot of sentiments of a lot of other hiring managers. These are professionals who have years and years of experience. So it's not just, their one track mind. You heard four individuals that said that that degrees may not be required. It's more so about how you communicate your skill set, right? So make sure you all get the information first. Make sure you position yourself to look like a subject matter expert in your field or in the industry that you're trying to pivot into, rather than just someone who's aspiring or hoping to get to a certain place. You have to show that person that if you are, again, I'm going to use the example of just working at a retail store. So if you're working at JCPenney, nothing wrong with that. But you can still work at JCPenney and you can still be taking courses on the side on AWS or cybersecurity or network security. You can do all of those things, and you need to show that and highlight that not only on your resume, but on your LinkedIn as well before reaching out to any of these individuals.
So I would add to that, Aaliyah, because I think you make an interesting point. So let's say you're at JCPenney, right? Retail's hard. So when I worked retail, I take a lot of what I learned in retail and use it even to this day, right? Dealing with customers, getting to know their name, intuiting what they're looking for and making sure they're getting it, etc. So don't, if you're looking for an entry level or kind of trying to break into tech and pre-sales tech, yes, go to Coursera, go to these other places where you can gain access to technology and its context and what it's all about. But don't neglect to advance or utilize what you've learned in retail or in, being a server at a restaurant, right? Because ultimately our customers are kind of the same that way, right? And you become an even better seller, an even better pre-sales technologist.
If I could add one more thing, I definitely wholeheartedly agree. When I tell you that retail taught your boy patience, like people will come up talking crazy to me.
Yes.
And I would snap back because I was young. I was 16, and you would come talk, you know what I mean? Y'all are paying enough to care about your thought, So I had to learn, but okay, this person is mad because the shirt broke or whatever. Don't let them take you out of your character. That's what I had to learn. It does not matter how much money I'm being paid or how long the line is. No one has the power over me to take me out of my character. And because I learned that then, now if I'm talking to a prospect or a customer that's upset, or I'm talking to a coworker that's upset, I can remain calm. I've actually had someone call me, a peer, and try to go off on me. And I told him, listen, I'm not going to talk over you. You're not going to talk at me. If we can't have a conversation's done. He kept talking crazy and I hung up. That's it. You have to learn that. So that's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is we're telling you a lot about, YouTube University and learn these things. Someone asked the question, well, how can you build a portfolio? So let me help you with that. If, let's say you're trying to get into IT, period, and you're researching on what do you do if a computer is running slow. So once you figure out, okay, if a computer is running slow, it's typically too many programs, the hard drive is old, not enough memory. If you think those are the three big things, write a LinkedIn article about it. Basic PC troubleshooting. Now you're taking something that you've learned and you're applying it, and you have something that's tangible, a LinkedIn article. If you're trying to get into pre-sales, you're trying to sell something, take something you already know. It can be Gmail, it can be Google Chrome. Maybe it's 3 extensions that you really like that help you shave hours off your day. Record a demo video of you talking how to use these extensions. Again, now you're not just learning, but the best way to learn is if you have to teach someone else. That's why teachers are perpetual learners. So once you learn, teach that to someone else, because you're going to get better and you have something tangible. So that's how you start to build a portfolio.
I have one
agree
example on that. One of the best resumes I've ever received had a link to a guy who did a demo on how to use Slack. This guy, he was looking for an associate solutions engineer role. His name's Disroy. I can't pronounce his last name. I hope he's on. It blew me away. And I've used that example so many times since I've seen it, because I clicked that link and I watched him demo Slack, and I thought, this guy knows how to present. And I would have never known that without that one video. He just recorded himself doing it. It was genius.
I'm gonna let you guys in on another secret here. So some people may know, some people may not, but I actually was a part of a boot camp before, right? I was part of a sales engineering boot camp, and one of our assignments was to do a demo. And I was like, I'm nervous, but I was like, I've done demos before, in the sense, maybe not in this exact career path, but I knew a lot about HR, knew a lot about resumes. So I did a quick 5-minute demo on how to build a resume using this free platform, the software that I talk about all the time called Flow CV. And I posted it on LinkedIn. And I actually got interviews off of that, y'all. Like, I had interviews off of that, and I actually skipped certain parts of the interview because people seen that demo. It was a 5-minute demo. Seriously. So that is a bar. And at one point, I actually started, when I would apply to HCM softwares, I actually added a link to that demo to my resume, for the same way that Chris was saying that, because my whole thing is, and this is just me, maybe this is just my personality, but sometimes your laziness can be to your advantage, right? If you don't want to repeat things that you've already done, just do it one time, and that's your portfolio. You can create I think you can create free websites. There's so many different platforms you can create a free website. I say shout out to Lars at Flow CV. That's my founder friend. He has a platform right there where you can create your own portfolio. Not only can you have your resume, you can have your website. You got GitHub, you got AWS, you got Salesforce, you got HubSpot. All of these free platforms where you can actually show projects that you've done. That is essentially a portfolio. You just have to be able to slowly show that skill set and build that out. Even for those who are interested in database management or post sales or data analytics, all that stuff. Simply using something like Lucidchart or what have you, and showing that you know how to create like a very simple relational database, that is a portfolio. You know what I'm saying? That's something that you can add to your portfolio. So I love that tip, Karsten and Chris.
Aaliyah, if I could, one more thing. I'm sorry.
No, for real. Go ahead.
But like with the portfolios, I hope this is not scaring anyone. So let me tell you a quick story. Like a lot of times when you're trying to get into tech or cybersecurity, one of the interview questions may be, tell me about your home lab. And okay, that's good, but it's also kind of intrusive because you don't know that person's financial situation. They may not have the money and the real estate to have 3 server racks behind them. So I don't really deal with that question, right? If you ask it, that's cool, but I personally don't like it. But you can still do things that are as free as possible. If you have a computer or the library, you have the internet, then you can build a portfolio. Again, Ali, you mentioned like you can create free websites. There's free flow charting software. Don't be embarrassed if you don't have Karsten Cheers, the salesengineeringleader.com. If it's karsten.blogspot.com, doesn't matter. It's a presence and it's a link that other people can get to. So don't feel like you got to spend money to build a portfolio. You don't have to.
Yep.
Y'all know I'm always talking about something that's free or inexpensive because most of you all are looking to transition for financial reasons as well. So you ain't got it. And even for those who are looking at this live who may have participated in a boot camp, the cheapest boot camp, at least on the pre-sale side, is about $3,000 or $4,000. So we're trying to give you all actionable tips to preserve your pockets, but actually help you get to that next level as well. So I love that tip as well. And I think Alonzo was about to say something.
Can I just add one thing? This could help some. There's some that are in the motion of looking for a job, and they're like, "Well, I don't have the experience, but I need the experience to get the interview and things like that." I would say one thing you can do as well is tap into your personal network. Like if you have some business owners within your family, within your friend circle, and things like that, who will let you come and do what you're going for their business, that could be something you can use as a project, you can use as an example, and it can be real world. If they need something sold and you want to go SDR, be their SDR. Hey man, let me be your SDR. You don't have to call it that. Just like, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and then just go show up on Monday and do that. If they have software involved in their company, listen, I'm going to take your software, I'm going to make a video of it, I'm going to go do a presentation for you. I got an idea. And involve yourself for two things. One thing I notice a lot of times, the first step to doing good in an interview, you got to be confident in yourself. Even if you know all the information and you could do a encyclopedia of the information, if you're not confident, it's gonna come across in the interview the way you answer the question. So for a lot of people, you're more confident when you have repetition and you do something. So yeah, if you got a business owner around you, see if you can do that for them. And maybe you get paid, maybe you don't. When it comes to recruitment, never worry about how much you get paid, as in that's value to your skill set. If you do something, you do it. It doesn't matter if it's free, you volunteered, if it's for yourself, it doesn't matter. If you perform that, you perform that. Okay. So that's just one thing I just wanted to add, because I know some of us have people in our circle that would be more willing to give us an opportunity. No interview, no application, no none of that. Just, hey, Aunt, can I come, do this for you or something like that. So I would start looking into your network and see what you could do for people in your network. Get letter recommendations from them and things like that, and document it all. And that's a real business. That's you really doing something for a business in real production, environment.
Great point, Alonzo. Thank you so much. Now I know we're getting into some good stuff. I haven't even got to the rest of the questions. Like so many questions on this board here, but this is all great stuff, and I appreciate you all for being so thorough with your answers. Man, I wanted to say something else about the network. So we're here on live and we're LinkedIn primarily, right? But I want to also let you all know that yeah, we might still be experiencing the pandemic in a sense. Some people believe that it's over, depending on where you're at. But get out and network in real life as well. There's a lot of events and a lot of spaces that you can show up in person, and that can do wonders for you. That can do wonders for you in your career, and then also your confidence. I seen one of my good friends speak about like this whole journey is about confidence, and I think I've heard many individuals on this panel say in so many words, practice makes perfect. Get out and do it. Like, do it scared, as Heather mentioned, and that's really the key. One of the strategies that I use early in my journey is I applied to some of the low hanging fruit. Right, what I mean by low hanging fruit was like jobs that I felt like I could get an interview for pretty easily. Now, this is just from my lens. It might have been like startups, it might have been smaller organizations, it might have been organizations where I could clearly identify who the hiring manager was, who the recruiter was, and it was a small team. And I made sure that I customized my resume to fit that job description, but I didn't embellish, right? My skill set was very much in that lane, but I took off all irrelevant skill sets or irrelevant information, and I was able to land over 20 interviews. But very early in my career journey, within 5 weeks, I landed my first offer as a sales engineer, and it was actually with a startup. This was like my first week of being in the my sales engineering boot camp. But to me, that was one of the low hanging fruits I mentioned. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted to do it scared. I wanted to get out there and get experience with interviewing and see if I was still getting the same results. Like if the recruiters were asking some of the same questions. And once I got that, I got my training wheels off. I'm like, okay, well, now I know how to interview. I know that there's going to be possibly 3 to 4 rounds of interviews. I probably have that first interview with the recruiter, and then I might have an interview with the hiring manager or a peer. If it's a peer, then that means that I'm going to probably have 2 more interviews. And then at some point, it's going to be a demo. I learned how to ask questions ahead of time to make sure I wasn't wasting their time or mine, and I was prepared. Don't be afraid to ask certain questions. Don't be afraid to ask about the interview structure. Don't
Yep.
be afraid to ask if there's any tips that the recruiter can give you to be more successful, because their job is to recruit and find talent. So you're helping them out. Like if they find that you're a good candidate, but you can make this one tweak, and you ask them like, hey, Alonzo, what is something that you think I could do better to stand out on the next interview if I were to be moved on to the next interview with the hiring manager? 9 times out of 10, Alonzo's gonna be like, yeah, well, Carson, he's really laid back, but he's gonna ask you about that C++ certification on your resume, so you better come with it. And that those tips like that not only helped me build really strong relationships with other recruiters in the industry, whether I ended up taking the job or not, or whether I was offered the job or not, but it also helped me better prepare and not waste that hiring manager's time. So I'm literally focusing on that skill set. And you know what that's called? If you're trying to go into the pre-sales world, that's called doing discovery. We ask those deep questions, and you find out what those pain points are ahead of time, so that way you can design your demo um, to meet that client's needs. So I just wanted to give you all that tip as well. But anyone, feel free to chime in before I move on to the next question.
Yeah. So, Aaliyah, you mentioned a couple of things, and you're absolutely right. When you exhibit discovery skills with your recruiter, with the hiring manager with whom we've already spoken, um, one thing I learned is don't be afraid to just ask them, what is there? Are there any traps with this guy? Is there anything I should know about? Is there anything that really interests this person? And a good hiring manager and a good recruiter will tell you. They won't try to push you in a corner or trap you. And if you feel they're not giving you that information, you should be a little bit wary about that, right? That they're not there to make you fail, right? They're there to help you succeed because they want to get people hired as well. But another thing you mentioned, and as a hiring manager and a recruiter, we're post-COVID now, right? So we had a good 3 years of, and I did this. I hired a lot of solution engineers during COVID, and we were all kind of in lockdown. We weren't visiting customers, but most pre-sales engineers are paired with, or at least support in a designated or pooled environment with salespeople. Salespeople are out and about. They are out. They might not be in customer prem all the time, but they're meeting them for lunch. They're meeting them for dinner. They're meeting them at events. They're going out. Today's pre-sales engineers and architects need to be prepared for that, right? They need to be out with their salespeople. They need to be out in front of customers. They need to be dividing and conquering and being creative. There's a lot to say for face-to-face, and that creates success, and that creates a benefit to the engineer where they become more immersive and they're learning more and more, and they can take what they're learning from the customers that they're out and about with, and they extend that to their other customers and helping their salespeople win new business. So anybody who's on this phone, it's no longer sitting at home remote, really anymore in many instances. In some instances it is, but when you're in a particular region, really you should be prepared to be out and about, meeting with clients and meeting with your AEs in person.
I definitely agree with that. So really quick, I know you all seen Carsten drop off. There's actually a tornado siren where he's at. So you all keep him and his family and everyone in his area in your prayers and hope that he remains safe. So he actually had to get off for safety reasons. So we thank you, Carsten, for all of your contributions. You gave some great advice here. But we're gonna keep it moving and just pray for our dear friend. So thank you for that, Heather. I agree with that. I think we should definitely learn how to get out and about. And that's also a confidence builder, right? The pandemic really, it had its advantages and its disadvantages. And the disadvantage was it made people afraid to socialize. So getting out and learning how to communicate in real life is really going to help you in your career. And I know some people are like, okay, where do I start? You can start on LinkedIn, looking at events and see if there's anything that are going to be in person. You can filter by whether this is an online event or in person. You can get on Eventbrite. You can also get on Meetup. If you're on Facebook, they have in-person events as well. Um, and then I'm actually a part of a few different organizations. So there's one organization specifically called Blacks in Technology, and that is an international organization. And there's chapters in every major city in each state. And you can join that for free. And a lot of times we have in-person events where you can network. And it's not just about, sales engineering or pre-sales or tech sales or solutions architecture and post-sales. It's about just networking with individuals in the tech space. You also have sisters in sales for women that are for women of color. It doesn't really matter. And then you also have different organizations. And the like Pre-Sales Academy has their free meetups as well. So just get creative with looking at different events, and also try to show up to some of these tech events in person. You don't have to pay a whole bunch of money to attend an Afro Tech or any other tech event. There are smaller events and networking events in your local community, or just a hop and a skip over where you can network with other individuals. But don't go out there. Now, this is a tip as well, but don't go out there with your suit and tie and you know expecting to get a job. Really focus on trying to build relationships, because the relationships is going to what is what's ultimately going to bring you the job. People want to meet you as a person, because they also want to make sure they're going to be comfortable with working with you. So come as yourself, right? But try to be polished to an extent, but come as yourself. Don't go with the intention of you're going to hand out resumes. But if people want to get in touch with you, you can just give them your LinkedIn. That would be my advice.
Yeah, one thing I say is if you ask somebody for money, they'll give you advice, and if you ask somebody for advice, they'll give you money. And
Mm,
so start with that. That'll
I
build the
agree.
relationship.
I agree with that. All right, so in the spirit of time, we're doing great, and I appreciate this is a really good conversation. I came back from Arizona, so I actually flew in to Charlotte last night, and I didn't get home to midnight, and I worked today, so I'm tired. So we're not gonna go over time, y'all. But this is a great conversation, and I know there'll be more, and I'll have you all back in the future. But I definitely want to hear from everyone about like what's some of the best ways that people can get hands-on experience, and like how do you feel about boot camps? Because I know a lot of individuals that are watching this right now may be attending boot camps. So whether that be um, the pre-sales or sales engineering boot camps, or even tech sales boot camps, um, how much weight does that hold whenever you're evaluating a candidate? I want to start with Alonzo first, and then we can work our way around.
Yeah, I mean, in short, I'll say from a recruiter, depending on what the hiring manager is absolutely looking for, but a lot of times the degree isn't. So no, I haven't had a hiring manager yet that specifically said get me someone from a boot camp. They're more so just saying what skills we're looking for. So what I would say, because I've interviewed folks from boot camps, also those who are just self-taught, it still comes back down to, can you effectively communicate the skills that I'm asking you? But it's based on your resume, like if you have certain projects you've listed, or if you just have certain like you use your format on your resume, but you can show things you've been able to accomplish, and it's all, you got KPIs, you have metrics, you have results. Yeah, and I'm just going to ask you, and as long as you can communicate that to me, I'm fine. But we don't necessarily go searching, for boot camps or things like that. We don't have. I was thinking for myself, at least the managers I recruit for, there isn't a we don't want them or we do want them. It's still going to come down to how you can communicate your skills.
Thank you, Heather or Chris.
Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, I would agree. It's not if someone wants to do it for self-enablement, to make them feel more secure, or find areas in which they are really attracted, and so they become a SME. and they add that, to their resume or their talking track with, talking to the recruiter, that's fine. But it's not necessarily a requirement. Quite honestly, when they come on board to a new company, whether it be Nutanix or VMware or whomever, they're just going to kind of have to learn the way we do things anyway. And that sort of adds to maybe them understanding and feeling comfortable with it. But it would be a self-requirement. It wouldn't be a requirement for me as a hiring manager.
Yeah, the way I look at this is, so Terrell, I see Gibbons on this chat. I see some other familiar faces. These are people that when I posted that I was going to help a few people get into pre-sales, they reached out to me. We had calls, we had conversations. Terrell and I had an awesome conversation. I walked him through the whole office on the laptop, showing him what's going on. That was more impressive to me than a boot camp, because these people reached out, they introduced themselves. Every single one of us has a backpack of stories. You have a whole backpack full of your own stories, and you can just pull them out, and you can apply whatever you're looking for with these stories, whether it's pre-sales, marketing, sales, engineering. If you can do that and appropriately network with people, especially people who open themselves up or people who you find on panels, then you're in. That totally impresses me, right? I have LinkedIn up. I've gotten 9 invitations. One of these invitations has a note. That's the one that stood out. And it says, "Hey, Chris, I'm currently on it. Thank you so much." I'm like, oh, this is awesome, right? It's always those little tiny things that make a big difference.
I agree with that. Great points, you all. Now, in the respect of time, I wanna wrap up with just a little bit, but I wanna ask a few more questions if I may. So we talked a little bit about what the value of having a degree or certification means to you, even down to um, a, a s- like what you're looking for as a recruiter or hiring manager, soft skills, networking, etc. And I want to know, what are some things, like how do you define your sense of leadership? Like what type of leader would you consider yourself to be? Chris, Heather, and then even for yourself, Alonzo, I know you are a senior technical recruiter, so you have the ability to mentor others. So I would love to learn about like your particular leadership skills. You can go ahead and kick it off, Alonzo. That's fine.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, so in my current role, individual contributor, but I have been a people leader. I've led a team of recruiters and also coordinators. As an individual contributor, I think a lot of times your leadership is going to, you can, influential leadership is going to be important. So you may not have the ability to kind of hold someone to the fire, if you will, but you want to lead through your influence. You would want to be able to earn trust with whoever your internal or external stakeholders with, so they can trust you. A lot of times from that, you need to be more of like an advisor, if you will, so you can kind of build that trust. So that's as an individual. Then as a manager, you can look for, I'll let them speak to that as they're currently managed. But I would just say for those that are coming into individual role, yeah, influential leadership would be something that you could look to kind of work with your team and those that you interact with at your company.
And before we move on to Chris and Heather, I want to ask you something else, Alonzo. What is one way that someone could stand out, to get your attention specifically? Like if they are an applicant or if they're just looking for some advice, what is that one thing?
Oh yeah, I mean, honestly, if someone messaged me on, say they were to message me on LinkedIn, which I'll get a lot of messages, but if it's something specific in that message, like I know that like I had someone when there was a big re-event that happened, or say there's a conference, or say the company I'm with at that time, we had a new product launch or something like that, and they told me, "Yo, I really like this new product that came out, or I really like what your company is doing," and kind of built a relationship with me first, or at least let me know that they have an understanding or they're interested, and have some enthusiasm for what we're doing, and then kind of get into kind of like, specifically the position that they're wanting. That will set them apart, because most people who approach me is straight to I need an interview. And I kind of already know that that's what you want, is an interview. But I need to know, like, especially if it's a transition situation. But yeah, so that will stand out. Just dropping me something to let me know that you either know something about the company, something new that's going on, or if you know something a little bit about me, of course, if you tell me something that I didn't know, or you saw me at an event, or that I spoke here or something, and you're like, hey, yeah, so a personal touch will stand out to me more than anything.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that Anzo said is, be human, right? Be human and realize that recruiters and hiring managers are humans first. Like, we understand that this is a social media or social networking platform, but in order to get these individuals' attention, you want to show that you've done some research to try to build a rapport with them. You can easily go to any of these individuals' profile, mine included, and look at our work history, look at our about me section, look at certain things that interest us just by looking at our activities for those who are active, and you can pull out commonalities, right? Get to know that person first before, and do some research ahead of time. I'm not going to call out the person who did this, but I could tell that they were just literally copying and pasting the same message to everybody, and they may be just switching a name. There was no individual, touch. AWS that sorry that buzzed out, but I see you've been a recruiter at AWS for X amount of years, and maybe you've done this before, and I would love to learn a little bit more about your experience and what drove you to stay at AWS so long. What do you like about the culture, et cetera, et cetera. Especially if that's something that you're trying to get to know. Like he mentioned, he knows that he's a recruiter at the end of the day. He knows that AWS is a big name, and that's probably an interest of yours. But I would encourage you to learn about the individual first, do research about the company. Just because it's a big name doesn't mean that that's going to be a good fit for you, right? Learn a little bit more about how you could fit into that role and what you can contribute and offer to that person on the other side of the phone or the screen before you ask anything from them in return. I would love to hear from Chris and Heather.
Go ahead, Heather.
So I just want to comment on the last thing you said, Aaliyah. I mean, I think sometimes we get really excited about conversations with, some of the big companies, and AWS is obviously, a very visible company, but don't be afraid if you feel pretty quickly, even if you get an interview or two, that it might not be the place for you. Because there's a lot there. I know it's frustrating, and I'm seeing a lot of the comments, and I now is an interesting time, right? But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't strive to find the home that works best for you, and trust your gut and feel, the vibe of what you might be embarking on. So, nothing against AWS or VMware or AT&T or Nutanix or anything else, but, feel your gut, as you're working through the interviews. But as far as leadership style, mine is, I'm not a micromanager. I like to coach. I coach people who need coaching. I let those that are good at what they do to do what they do. And that's really important. And I took this class once. It wasn't a class. It was sort of this session we had. And this coach was telling us that we should all be concentrating on what we do best and spending most of our time on improving what we do best, and not spend a lot of time on what we don't do very well, unless it's a fatal flaw to our career or a life or something like that. And so if I have team members that are just so awesome at certain things and they really don't have a fatal flaw, I just influence them to continue with what they love to do and spend their valuable time just making themselves better and better. And then that way I have time for the rest of the people on my team to bring them on board and find that what they find really attractive. Ultimately, I want my team to be successful. I do not want them to fail in any way, especially if I hire them and bring them on board. So that's what I would say. And then I think myself as a manager, it's my job to really shield them from what may be coming at me from above. right? If I'm
Mhm.
able to help them and keep them focused on their role in their job, encourage them maybe to involve themselves in some extracurricular activities that they find interesting, whether it be ERGs or, affiliate groups and things like that, where they can network, great, where I'm kind of shielding them from some other things that would distract them. And I've found that that's been pretty successful.
Thank you so much, Heather. That was awesome. My favorite part of what you said was just focusing on what you do best. A lot of times we like to nitpick at ourselves and we can be our own worst enemies, myself included. I think I made a post, I don't know, earlier this month or something about imposter syndrome because I recently broke into tech. I'm approaching my 3 month anniversary just in a couple of days. But a lot of times you nitpick about, whether or not you should be there or whether or not you actually fit, or focusing on all the things that you aren't rather than focusing on what you already are and who you already are. And that's honestly the key to even getting into the industry, let alone staying in it. You have to focus on what you're already good at and build upon that, right? So I love that. And I love the fact that you're not a micromanager. I think a lot of people can appreciate that as well. Because if you're
Nobody
already good at what
likes
you're
that.
doing,
But what
yeah,
I'll tell you is, when you become a manager and you claim yourself to not be a micromanager, guess what? You're still talking to all of your people several times a day because your
thank you,
people
Neandra.
are reaching out to you. So it's not like you're not aware of what's going on. You're developing these awesome relationships, but it's coming to you instead of you forcing it on them. And it's a really rewarding experience.
Exactly, exactly. And Chris, what's your leadership style?
Well, I would say two things. Management management is assigned position. You are assigned as a manager and you have an assigned set of people. Leadership is not assigned. Leadership is optional. Leadership is a gift. And within your team, you will have some people that allow you to lead them, and some people will never allow you to lead them. They will allow you to manage them. And I got into management because I was leading before management. Everybody in everybody in this live and post live, even if you're an individual contributor, you have way more leadership influence than you may realize, and actually in some cases more. Um, a great leader, individual contributor, is somebody who doesn't add stress; they remove stress from people. This is one way I look at it. And this is what I do as a manager as well. I try to, um, anytime I'm interacting with people, I'm looking at what I can remove and not adding stress to them. I'm always trying to pair people up with things that they love, not just like or they're okay with, but just like what you said, Heather. I'm trying to find ERG groups. I'm funding women in tech trips. I'm funding things that make people tick. Um, I'm very interested in connecting people to things they love. One thing I do is I make it a point to get people who love to be on stage at our sales kickoff on stage. I do this every time because it means something to them. That's real leadership. You actually have to love people to lead them. You don't have to like them, but you have to love them in some way to do it right. And that's my philosophy.
Y'all are awesome. So we didn't rehearse this at all. And honestly, majority of them just met maybe like 30 minutes before the call. So this is great. I really appreciate you all. And this is what it's all about. We're to provide you all actionable tips, provide that inspiration, yes, but more so, we want you to get out and do the work. Like I'm all about not over consuming without putting action behind it, right? You're not A lot of people will probably spend a lot of time trying to learn, 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 learn. And this live was designed specifically to show you that what the hiring managers and the recruiters are looking for. And these are people with years of experience, worked at many different companies. And then, of course, they have their own perspective, right? But what everybody said tonight, I hope it resonates with you all in your journey to tech. Um, if you all need anything as far as support, these individuals are here to support you. But then, just like Xavier said, Xavier is really active in the sales engineering community. There are a lot of people that are mentors that may not have been on the live yet, right? But they're mentors in their own right. So just reach out to them, but don't reach out with the intent to just take, right? Reach out with the intent to also give. And if you all need any support, you can go to my page. I know this live is premiered on the I'm Breaking into Tech lives page. This is the first time doing it on this page. I wanted to do some type of a separation between my personal page and the live Breaking into Tech page. So that's why you guys are not seeing it on my page, but the replay will be available. We'll also have it on, if you're viewing this from Facebook, it'll be available in our personal Facebook group. If you guys are interested in learning about that, I'll talk to you all more about that as well. But before we wrap, I wanted to also let you all or ask you one more question, or two more questions rather, and then also just hear a little bit about like how you felt this went tonight in true survey fashion, live fashion. So but my last question is really about interview tips, honestly. What's one piece of advice or one thing that you wish a candidate would say or do in an interview that you're just not seeing, you know, it but you believe that will help them stand out? So one question or just one activity. So I would love to start with our famous recruiter friend, Alonzo.
Okay, real quick. So what I would say, yeah. So I've been a part of studies where we will look at preparation, and sometimes recruiters will then go and prep a candidate even before they meet with the manager to try, and those interviews will end up at least 5 times more likely to move on through the interview process. So I have to lean on show up more prepared, more prepared about what's current state of that company that you're interview with. If they just had a like something major happen last week, know about that. I need, if you bring that up, and that's something that I want. And I would also say that for me, listening to a lot of debriefs. So these are interviews that are done. Either I'm sitting into them live when they're happening, or I'm going back and kind of getting the feedback. I will say that if your interaction is more of a conversation, you're going to probably have a better chance than if your interview ends up as an interrogation. So the more you can be comfortable in the interview, and when managers ask you questions, think of it as kind of a conversation, almost like a consultant type of conversation, versus just strictly, I ask you one question and you give me like one quick response, and then you wait for me to ask you another question. Like, we can have a conversation and dialogue. So those are just a couple of things that I would say.
And real quick before I go to Heather and Chris, Alonzo, if you can go back to your younger self, maybe it was 2003, 2007, whenever your career started, right?
Mhm.
What is one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Yeah. I wish I could, honestly. But I started in 2007. I would have taken my career more serious from the beginning, like more strategic. Like I feel that I was looking for a job when I first started, and I should have been thinking more career. When I started changing my mindset to thinking career, where do I want to be 5 years from now, and start reverse engineering that backwards, my career path sped up, my exposure within my company sped up, my development sped up, and to be frank, my income sped up once I started knowing where I wanted to go and reverse that, and not just about what job can I get? And I think a lot of people sometimes when they approach me for advice, it's really about how can I get this next job? And I understand we need one, but if you have a plan, even if it's a 3 year plan, you start to strategize. What company should you go to? What should you learn? How should you kind of maneuver? And then you'll end up where you want to go, and that'll speed up the process. I know it sounds like a long way to do it, but I think that's what I wish I would have done in 2007. Focus on a career path, where I want to go, how I want to do it, and reverse that backwards, and like have a laser focus of what I'm doing, versus just kind of, I don't know, going with it, going with the flow.
Love that. Love that. All right. So let's go Chris next. First, what is the one piece of advice or that you would have for a candidate that's trying to interview? Like, what's that one thing that candidates could do better? And then also, if you could go back and give yourself, your younger self, any bit of advice, what would that be?
Yeah, great questions. Candidates, I would love to see people be themselves. I want personality. Um, I think that everybody has a superpower. We need to lean into that. If it's quirky, great. I love it. I want to see that. Myself, I wish I would have given myself that permission a long time ago. Don't negotiate with yourself. Don't get in your own way. Be person, right? Oprah said she would have made a lot more money a lot earlier if she would have learned that she would have just being herself would have worked. It's the same thing here. I want to talk to people who are just willing to be them. The piece of advice I would have given myself is, well, it's along those lines too. But don't focus on what good looks at where you are. Focus on what good looks like in general, not what the company you're at. Like Alonzo, what does good senior tech recruiting look like at every company you know of, not just at AWS? If I was to focus on what network operations center engineering looked like at 5 different organizations, and I connected with those people, then I might have realized maybe it wasn't for me a little quicker.
Love that, Chris. Love that so much. But that's one of the things Chris and I talked about offline is about how he always focuses or leads from a place of authenticity, and he loves people being themselves. And that's really refreshing to hear, especially for those who are of us who are transitioning into this new space. I just came back from a work trip. This is my first work trip with my company. The first time I've been able to meet all of my team members in person. And I was walking around the office with my cartoon socks on. I had on, I think, either Angelica socks or something like that. But it was a conversation starter. But I'm like, one, my feet hurt. Two, I'm working at home majority of the time, and I'm sitting crisscross applesauce barefoot. So that wasn't a thing. I seen my coworkers with their tattoos out, their nose piercings. Some people had colorful hair, and none of that mattered. It was just focusing on what we were able to bring to the conversation, and that's it. We were all able to be our authentic selves, our quirky selves, our goofy selves, and we still were able to get the job done at the end of the day. So don't feel like you have to be anybody else but yourself. So love that, Chris. Last but not least, Miss Heather Sadler.
So I totally agree. Just be yourself. Actually, my first interviews after they're sent to me from a recruiter, they're very casual. I just want to get a view of the client's personality and how our conversation flows. And honestly, we talk about like, where are you from? And, what's going on? And, it becomes a personal conversation pretty quickly. And then it flows from there. And I really enjoy that because it gives a good vibe of how I feel like they'll fit with the team and things like that. And then the other thing is, and I think we all get asked this when we apply, is, why do you want to come here, right? Discovery is great, but all of us, it's hard to have all this advanced discovery, right? Because every company is a little bit different. So I don't like to put that all on the candidate, but I do want to know, okay, why are you leaving where you are today, and why do you want to come here? And I just look for some great examples there. And I would say that's at any level of your career, where if you've been working for, 30 years or 5 years, right? You kind of have to have that story down and have it make sense. And then the one piece of advice, it's hard to go back because I think things are often meant to be. I think I've enjoyed my career the whole way. Could I have been more aggressive in pursuing a leadership position early in my career? I could have. I think I was in my career for a good 10 to 12 years before I got a leadership position or a manager position per Chris, right? And then I became a leader. But if you think you're interested in that and you wait a little bit too long, it becomes a chicken and the egg, right? Well, I can't get a leadership manager position because I've never been a leadership manager, right? So you got to find that, even though if you've been really successful, you need to find that first person who's willing to give you that chance. But also when I look back, I think that even if you're in a position today where you're not super thrilled about it, and back to the retail example, find those areas in which you're learning really good skills that will carry you forward, and enjoy that and advance those skills, even if you're not quite in the job that you want to be in right at that moment. Because when you look back on it 10 to 15, 20 years ago, oh my gosh, I'm so good at this now because I learned what I thought was crap in this crap job I had, which turned out to be really good skills. So just kind of be in the moment is what I would say all through.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. Again, Carson had to drop early because there was a tornado warning or a watch in his area, so we want to keep him in our prayers. But for those who missed the beginning, you have the opportunity to go back and watch this. So, yeah, I'm gonna give you all a few moments to just share like your perspective, what you thought about the live as well, and then I'll get into some final announcements before we head out. You all do want to wait until the end of this because it's going to be interesting things that I have to share with you all. So please stay tuned for at least the next 5 to 10 minutes. But yeah, just final thoughts. Anybody can popcorn style.
Really enjoyed it, and I just want to encourage everyone. I know it can be difficult looking for a job or transitioning. I just encourage you to be confident, and yeah, you're here on a Friday night with us. Then that says a lot at the same time. So I had a lot of fun, and I just want to again encourage everyone.
Appreciate you, Alonzo. And I had a conversation with my family. I know it's weird, but I showed them your picture, so we're gonna do some digging because I told Alonzo, I was like, when I seen him on when we connected on Zoom, I was like, you where are your people from? You kind of look like one of my cousins. So yeah, we have some parallels there, and I think then we're gonna find out later on that we're related. My mission is to find all my cousins. But yeah, thanks for that, Heather.
This was so much fun. Thank you. I love all the comments from the attendees. It's been great seeing what everybody thinks of this. And I look forward to the next one. So thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, this reminds me that these are so important. And it reminds me that there's so much value to just discussing this just flat out and having a good conversation. And it reminds me of how much fun it is to help too. I just want to do more.
Love that.
Yep.
Love that. So I heard somebody ask where I got this mic from. Amazon, man. And it's called a fee phone or something like that. So it's less than $200. So it was right in my budget. So you don't got to get nothing pretty or fancy. But I was tired of people saying they couldn't hear me. All right. So yeah, so again, just play the live back if you all are interested in some of the tips that were dropped. We talked about being your authentic self. We talked about networking. We talked about interviewing. We talked about what it truly means, what the ATS or applicant tracking system really is and what it does, and what the recruiter's role is in all of this. We also talked about what recruiters and hiring managers are looking for in your resume, the value of a degree versus a certification, all things that you all want to hear. And then even they close it out with saying what type of leaders they are. So before you reach out to any of these individuals on this live, I want you all to make sure that you follow Chris's tip earlier, right? Which he said, research, connect, then apply. And even Heather said the same thing. Basically, Heather said in so many words, and these are my words, just my summary, right? With my colloquialism, she said, don't reach out to her if you don't have any connections, common connections, mutual connections, because she's not checking for you. And she's not the only person that's going to be like that, right? So make sure that you have relevant skills or experience and also have those relevant connections. My tip is find those parallels. So before reaching out to Alonzo, Karsten, Chris, or Heather, make sure that you have your LinkedIn profile up to date. Make sure you have your resume up to date. Make sure that it shows those transferable skills between the roles that you have and the role that you're looking for. Take the aspiring off of your LinkedIn. Take the aspiring off of your LinkedIn, right? Recruiters are not searching for aspiring nothing. They are searching for what you are, right? So please take that off. And I'm going to say it one more time. Please take the aspiring off your LinkedIn. In your About Me section, be very brief. Show your personality. Chris wants to see your personality. I want to see your personality as well. Very briefly, we don't need to know everything about you, but just need to know just enough about you to be curious. But highlight those hard skills, because LinkedIn is a database essentially, and recruiters can type in whatever word they want. It could be a skill set and they'll pop up and show relevant profile pages. Is that correct, Alonzo?
Yes, that's correct. It is. It's exactly what you said. Database. We filter, we sort, we query it just in our own way. Boolean search, all that good stuff. But yes, it is definitely a database.
All right, just wanted to touch on that. But thank you all so much for tuning in. So final announcements here. So some really, really cool things we have in store. So this was our first live of the year. So as many of you know, or some of you don't know, I broke into tech myself. So the first live, I was looking for a job, right? The second live, I got my offer. And this is the third live. It's crazy. But I've been taking my time with it. But I've now been at my employer for 3 months. I'm a solutions architect. I work for a pretty awesome company. I think it's awesome, at least. It's called Workiva. And I work in the post-sales space, but I do have that pre-sales experience, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll be able to tell you all more about that journey and what those first 3 months look like over time. What these lives are really going to be about is to still give you all those actionable tips. I'll continue to bring on thoughtful leaders, recruiters, hiring managers, even founders, anybody that I've come across within my journey. In addition to that, I wanted to announce that I now have some co-hosts, permanent co-hosts. So you all will get introduced to them in the coming weeks, but I have 3 permanent co-hosts that are going to come on. Well, we'll have some powwows just like this. We'll talk about our experiences in the industry. All of them are either in pre-sales or post-sales, and then we'll all have our own segment. So I'll primarily be talking about this stuff here, like how to break into tech, interview tips, resume tips, etc., because of my experience working in human resources and recruitment, and then also my experience with actively breaking into tech from a non-technical background. So for those who are not aware, I worked in HR and recruitment for 9 years before breaking into tech. I upskilled with those free resources that we talked about earlier, learned a programming language called SQL, built out the portfolio, networked effectively, received 5 offers in about 4 months, and I had over 20 interviews. Another cool thing is, this is not to be braggadocious, but this is also just to show you about a personal branding and why that's important. The recruiters that come on these lives are recruiters who typically have reached out to me and we've built a rapport. So I want to make that very clear that building your personal brand is very important, but it should not be a copy and paste. It should really be who you are authentically, because these are individuals that are going to want to get to know you. And Heather's one of my mentors. I'm going to look up to Chris and Carson as mentors as well. And yeah, you guys just try to build those authentic relationships with everyone. Before you reach out to anyone, again, make sure your resume and LinkedIn is up to date. For those who know, you can go to my personal page on LinkedIn, and it's Aaliyah Olds, just my name really. And I have, if you go to the available resources, I have a spreadsheet of free resources, and then I also have templates. I actually have 2 templates right now. I have a resume guide, and then also have a demo to show you how to build out that resume. The resume guide costs all of $5 whopping US dollars, and then I also have a guide or a template to help you reach out to hiring managers and recruiters, just like these individuals on this call here. It's pretty effective. I've used it many times and shared it with my mentees. That also costs all of $5. So you guys use it. It's out there for you all. But again, just what Chris said, research, connect, and apply. But I hope you all found value in this conversation, and thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.